You felt it before, that quiet moment when you realize you've been waiting for someone to see you, to notice you, to choose you, and the longer you wait, the more invisible you become. You've done everything they told you to do. You've been patient. You've been kind. You've made yourself available. You've shown up when no one else would. You've put her needs before your own. You've sacrificed your time, your energy, your peace, and still nothing. She doesn't text back. She cancels plans. She keeps you at a distance while giving her attention to someone else, someone who doesn't seem to try half as hard as you do. And you're left standing there wondering what you did wrong. The truth is harder than that. You didn't do something wrong. You became something wrong. You became a man who waits, a man who asks for permission, a man who needs to be chosen. And the world does not respect a man who waits. Introduction. This isn't about women, it's about you. It's about the way you've been taught to move through the world. The way you've been conditioned to believe that if you're good enough, patient enough, understanding enough, someone will finally see your value. But that's not how value works. Value isn't given to you by someone else's approval. It's not something you earn through service or sacrifice. It's not something that appears when you finally meet the right person. Value is something you claim. It's something you build. It's something you protect. And most men never do. They spend their entire lives in a quiet negotiation with the world, hoping that if they behave correctly, they'll be rewarded. They edit themselves. They soften their edges. They hide their needs. They pretend not to want what they want. And the world looks right past them, because the world does not reward caution. It does not celebrate hesitation. It does not desire the man who shrinks himself to fit into someone else's idea of who he should be. The man who stops chasing, who stops apologizing for his presence, who stops seeking permission to exist. That man becomes unshakable, and everything changes. Not because he suddenly becomes perfect, not because he learned some manipulative tactic or social trick, but because he stops betraying himself. He reclaims his center. He becomes the axis his life rotates around instead of orbiting everyone else. And that shift, that internal revolution, is what this is about. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Approval. You were taught to seek approval before you even understood what it was. As a boy, you learned quickly. Be good. Be quiet. Don't make trouble. Listen to authority. Follow the rules. Your worth was measured by how little disruption you caused, how well you obeyed, how easily you fit into the shape others demanded. And you carried that into adulthood. You carried it into your relationships. You carried it into your career. You carried it into every interaction where you felt the need to prove yourself, to justify your existence, to earn the right to be respected. You became a man who waits for permission. Permission to speak. Permission to want. Permission to take up space. Permission to be chosen. And every time you wait, you give away a piece of yourself. Because approval is a transaction. And in that transaction, you are always the one paying. You trade your authenticity for acceptance. You trade your boundaries for belonging. You trade your self-respect for the temporary comfort of being liked. But here's what no one tells you. The people you're seeking approval from don't respect you for it. They can't. Because respect is not given to those who beg for it. It's not given to those who mold themselves into whatever shape is most convenient. It's not given to the man who is afraid to displease, afraid to disagree, afraid to stand alone. Respect is given to the man who doesn't need it. The man who knows his value and refuses to negotiate it. The man who says what he means and means what he says. The man who can walk away when something no longer serves him. That man is rare, and because he's rare, he's noticed, he's remembered, he's respected. You've spent years doing the opposite. You've spent years trying to prove you're worthy of love by making yourself smaller. You've hidden your anger. You've swallowed your disappointment. You've accepted disrespect in silence because you were afraid of losing someone. And you lost yourself instead. You've become an expert at reading the room, at sensing what people want from you before they even ask. You've learned to adjust your personality, your opinions, your desires to match whoever you're with. With her, you're agreeable. You laugh at things that aren't funny. You pretend to enjoy things you don't care about. You hide the parts of yourself that might be too much, too intense, too different from what she seems to want. And you tell yourself it's compromise. You tell yourself it's maturity. You tell yourself that this is what it means to be in a relationship. But it's not. It's self-erasure. Every time you bite your tongue when you want to speak, every time you say yes when everything in you is screaming no, every time you pretend to be unbothered by something that bothers you deeply. You're teaching people that your truth doesn't matter. You're teaching them that your needs are negotiable, that your boundaries are flexible, that your presence is conditional on their approval. And they learn that lesson well. They learn that you'll accept less than you deserve. They learn that you'll tolerate inconsistency, disrespect, neglect, as long as they give you just enough attention to keep you hoping. And hope becomes your prison. Hope that tomorrow she'll text first. Hope that next time she'll make you a priority. Hope that eventually, if you're patient enough, understanding enough, giving enough, she'll finally see you the way you see her, but she won't. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's something wrong with the dynamic you've created. You've made yourself into someone who's always available, always understanding, always willing to accept whatever scraps of attention she offers. And scarcity creates value. Abundance creates complacency. You've given her an abundance of you, and she's become complacent. She knows you'll be there. She knows you'll answer. She knows you'll make time for her even when she doesn't make time for you. She knows you'll forgive her even when she doesn't apologize. And that knowledge kills attraction. Because attraction isn't logical. It's not about who treats her best or who's most deserving. It's about who makes her feel something. And the man who's always there, always agreeable, always seeking her approval, doesn't make her feel anything. He's predictable, he's safe, he's easy, and easy is forgettable. The woman who keeps you waiting, who gives you just enough attention to keep you around, but never enough to feel secure. She doesn't see a man. She sees a resource, a safety net, an option. And you let her, not because you're weak, but because you believe the lie. The lie that if you're patient enough, selfless enough, accommodating enough, she'll eventually see your worth. But she won't, because worth isn't seen in patience, it's seen in presence, in certainty, in the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. When you stop seeking approval, you stop being invisible. When you stop negotiating your value, you stop being taken for granted. And when you stop waiting to be chosen, you start choosing yourself. That's when everything shifts. Chapter 2. Emotional Control as Power. You've been told your whole life to express your emotions, to open up, to be vulnerable, to share how you feel. And there's truth in that. But there's also a trap. Because vulnerability without strength is not intimacy, it's dependency. And when you pour your emotions onto someone without restraint, without discipline, without control, you're not being authentic, you're being chaotic. And chaos repels. Women don't want a man who can't hold his own emotional weight. They don't want someone who crumbles under pressure, who reacts to every disappointment with anger or despair, who needs constant reassurance to feel stable. They want the opposite. They want the man who feels deeply but moves calmly, the man who can sit with discomfort without needing to fix it immediately, the man who can be disappointed, frustrated, even hurt, and still remain grounded. That's not suppression, that's sovereignty. Emotional control isn't about denying what you feel. It's about refusing to let what you feel control you. It's the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is automatic. It's impulsive. It's driven by the need to release tension, to defend yourself, to make the pain stop. When you react, you give your power away. You let the external world dictate your internal state. Response is deliberate. It's measured. It's rooted in self-awareness and self-discipline. When you respond, you remain the author of your own experience. You feel what you feel, but you choose what you do with it, and that choice is what makes you powerful. Think about the last time someone disrespected you, the last time a woman ignored your message, canceled plans without explanation, or said something that cut deeper than she realized. What did you do? Did you immediately text back, trying to fix it, explain yourself, seek clarity? Did you let your mind spiral into anxiety, replaying the interaction over and over, searching for what you did wrong? Or did you pause? Did you sit with the discomfort? Did you let the emotion move through you without letting it define your next move? Most men react. They chase, they explain, they try to control the situation by controlling the other person's perception of them. And in doing so, they lose themselves. The man who responds doesn't need to control anything outside of himself. He doesn't need her to understand him. He doesn't need her to validate his feelings. He doesn't need her to change her behavior so he can feel secure. He's already secure. Not because nothing bothers him, but because he's the one who decides what has power over him. That's the kind of man people feel. Not because he's loud or dominant or trying to prove something, but because he's solid. He doesn't waver. He doesn't collapse under pressure. He doesn't need you to make him feel whole. And that presence, that quiet certainty, is magnetic because most people are drowning in their own reactions. They're ruled by their emotions, by their fears, by their need for external validation. And when they encounter someone who isn't, they pay attention. They lean in, not because you're withholding, but because you're whole. Emotional control is not coldness. It's not detachment. It's not pretending you don't care. It's the opposite. It's caring deeply about your own inner state. It's protecting your peace. It's refusing to let anyone, no matter how important they are to you, destabilize the foundation you've built. And when you live from that place, you stop being moved by every shift in someone else's mood. You stop being manipulated by inconsistency, by mixed signals, by the quiet games people play to test your boundaries. You become immovable. And that's when you become undeniable. Chapter 3. The Strength of Boundaries. You've been taught that boundaries are selfish, that if you really care about someone, you'll be flexible. You'll compromise. You'll give them another chance and another and another. You'll tolerate disrespect because calling it out might push them away. You'll accept inconsistency because demanding consistency might make you seem controlling. You'll say yes when you want to say no because saying no might make you the bad guy. And so you erase yourself. You erase your needs, your limits, your self-respect. And you tell yourself it's love. But it's not love. It's fear. Fear that if you stand firm, you'll be alone. Fear that if you demand better, you'll lose what little you have. Fear that your value isn't enough to justify boundaries. But here's the truth you need to hear. Boundaries are not walls. They're not rejections. They're not punishments. They're definitions. They define who you are, what you accept, what you walk away from. They define the standard you hold yourself to and the standard you expect from those who want access to your life. And when you have no boundaries, you have no identity. You become whatever the situation demands. You become a mirror reflecting back what others need so they'll keep you around. You become convenient, available, safe. And safety in that context is death. Because no one desires the man who has no edge. No one respects the man who will tolerate anything. No one chooses the man who's always there, always understanding, always willing to overlook disrespect because he's afraid of confrontation. The man with boundaries is different. He doesn't argue, he doesn't plead, he doesn't explain himself into exhaustion trying to make someone see his worth. He simply moves. When someone disrespects him, he doesn't lash out. He doesn't try to change them. He just steps back, quietly, calmly, without drama. And that silence is louder than any argument because it says, I don't need to convince you to treat me well. I'll just remove myself from situations where I'm not valued. That's power. Not the power to control someone else, but the power to control yourself. The power to choose your own peace over the temporary comfort of being chosen by someone who doesn't truly see you. Think about the woman who takes you for granted, the one who texts you when she's bored but ignores you when she has better options, the one who keeps you close enough to benefit from your attention but far enough that you never feel secure. What happens when you stop being available? What happens when you don't respond immediately? When you don't rearrange your schedule to fit hers? When you stop pretending her inconsistency doesn't bother you? Two things. Either she realizes what she's losing and steps up, or she doesn't, and you realize she was never truly invested. Both outcomes are wins, because the goal isn't to manipulate her into wanting you. The goal is to stop betraying yourself by accepting less than you deserve. And when you set that boundary, when you say with your actions, I respect myself too much to be treated like an option, you become someone worth choosing, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're no longer easy to take for granted. Boundaries are how you teach people how to treat you, not through words, but through what you accept and what you don't. The man who accepts disrespect will receive more of it. The man who tolerates inconsistency will be met with more of it. The man who has no limits will be tested until he breaks. But the man who knows his worth, who holds his ground, who can walk away without anger or bitterness, that man is respected, even by those who lose him. Because deep down, everyone knows that a man without boundaries is a man without self-respect. And no one respects a man who doesn't respect himself. So stop apologizing for your standards. Stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. Stop waiting for permission to demand better. You don't need permission. You need courage. The courage to say no, the courage to walk away, the courage to be alone rather than tolerated. And when you find that courage, you'll find something else. Freedom. Chapter 4. Purpose over attachment. You've made her the center of your life, and it's killing you. Every decision you make is filtered through her. Every plan you have is adjusted to accommodate her. Every moment of your day is spent thinking about her, waiting for her, hoping she'll finally give you the certainty you crave. And she feels it. She feels the weight of being your entire world. She feels the pressure of being responsible for your happiness, your validation, your sense of purpose. And it suffocates her. Because women are not drawn to men who need them. They're drawn to men who want them but don't need them. There's a difference. Need is desperation. It's the hollowness that comes from having no center, no mission, no identity beyond the relationship. It's the man who collapses when she pulls away, who loses himself when she's upset, who has nothing to stand on when she's not there. Want is choice. It's the man who has his own life, his own goals, his own direction, and chooses to include her in it, not because he can't function without her, but because he values what she adds to a life that's already full. That man is rare, and that man is desired because he doesn't orbit her. He doesn't rearrange his entire existence to keep her attention. He has something else, something bigger, something that was there before she arrived and will be there if she leaves. He has purpose, and purpose is the antidote to attachment. When you have a mission, something you're building towards, something that demands your focus and energy and time, You stop being controlled by the emotional ups and downs of a relationship. You stop checking your phone every 5 minutes. You stop obsessing over why she didn't respond. You stop spiraling into anxiety every time there's distance, not because you don't care, but because you have something more important to care about: your growth, your goals, your legacy. And when a woman sees that, when she sees a man who's genuinely invested in something beyond her, she leans in. Because she's no longer the prize. She's no longer the thing you're chasing. You are. You're the one moving forward. You're the one building something. You're the one who's already whole. And she wants to be part of that. She wants to be chosen by the man who doesn't need to be chosen. She wants to be valued by the man who's already valuable. She wants to be included in a life that's already full of meaning, but most men don't have that. They have a job they tolerate, a routine they're bored by, a life they're trying to escape through distraction and comfort. And they use relationships as the escape. They use romance to fill the void that purpose should fill. They use a woman's attention to validate the life they're not proud of. They use love to avoid the hard work of becoming someone they respect. And it never works, because no amount of affection, no amount of intimacy, no amount of connection can replace the fulfillment that comes from pursuing something meaningful. You already know this. You've felt it. The way a good day of progress, of creation, of effort towards something you care about makes you feel more alive than any text message ever could. That's not an accident. That's your soul telling you where your focus belongs. Not on chasing her, not on winning her over, not on convincing her you're enough. On becoming someone you don't need to convince anyone about. When you shift your focus from attachment to purpose, everything changes. You stop being needy. You stop being reactive. You stop being the man who's waiting for her to validate his existence. You become the man who's already moving, already building, already growing. And that man doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, he doesn't cling, he invites. He says with his actions, "I'm going somewhere. You're welcome to join me, but I'm not stopping either way." And that invitation, that certainty, that unwavering forward motion is what she's been waiting for. Not a man who revolves around her, but a man who's worth revolving around. And you can't be that man if your life is empty without her. You have to fill it first, with work that matters, with goals that push you, with a vision for who you're becoming. And when you do, when you finally place your mission above your attachment, you'll realize something. She was never the thing you were missing. You were. Chapter 5. Becoming the center of your own life. You've spent your entire life orbiting expectations, orbiting approval, orbiting the people you hoped would see you, value you, choose you. And in all that orbiting, you lost your center. You lost the sense of who you are when no one's watching, who you are when no one's validating you, who you are when you're alone with yourself and there's no distraction, no noise, no external measurement of your worth. And that's where the work is. Not in becoming more attractive, not in learning the right things to say or the right way to act, not in manipulating circumstances so people treat you better, in reclaiming yourself, in becoming the axis your life rotates around, instead of rotating around everyone else. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. It's the quiet, unshakable knowledge that your value doesn't come from anyone else. It comes from you, from the way you treat yourself, the standards you hold yourself to, the promises you keep to yourself. And most men have no idea what that feels like. They've spent so long looking outward for validation that they've forgotten how to validate themselves. They don't know how to sit in their own presence without discomfort. They don't know how to be alone without feeling like something's missing. So they fill the void with distractions, with relationships, with constant activity and noise and stimulation. Anything to avoid the silence, anything to avoid the question they're afraid to answer. Who am I when no one's watching? That question is terrifying, because the answer might be no one, or worse, someone I don't respect. But that's where the transformation begins, not in the external, not in the way others see you, but in the way you see yourself. Do you respect the man you are? Do you trust him? Do you believe in him? Or have you been betraying him for so long that he's become a stranger? Every time you said yes when you meant no, every time you tolerated disrespect because you were afraid of being alone, every time you abandoned your own needs to make someone else comfortable, you betrayed yourself. And that betrayal, repeated over time, erodes your sense of self. It creates a man who doesn't know what he stands for, what he's willing to walk away from, what he's building toward. A man who's lost. But that man can be found, not through someone else's love, not through external success or validation or achievement, but through the daily practice of choosing yourself, choosing to honor your word even when no one's holding you accountable, choosing to set boundaries even when it's uncomfortable, choosing to pursue your purpose even when it's lonely. That's self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation everything else is built on. When you respect yourself, you stop seeking respect from others. You stop needing to be seen, to be validated, to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself. And that choice changes everything. It changes the way you walk into a room, the way you speak, the way you hold yourself, the way you respond to disrespect. It makes you solid. Not because you're pretending, not because you're performing, but because you're aligned. Your actions match your values. Your words match your intentions. Your life reflects the man you've decided to be, and people feel that. They feel the difference between a man who's trying to prove something and a man who has nothing to prove. They feel the difference between a man who needs their approval and a man who's indifferent to it. That indifference is not coldness, it's freedom. The freedom to be yourself without apology. The freedom to walk away from anything that doesn't honor you. The freedom to build a life on your own terms, answerable to no one but yourself. And that freedom, that self-possession, is what people are drawn to. Not because you're trying to attract them, but because you're no longer chasing them. You've stopped orbiting. You've stopped waiting. You've stopped negotiating your value. You've become the center. And from that center, everything else flows. The right relationships, the right opportunities, the right life. Not because you've become perfect, but because you've become whole. And a whole man, a man who knows who he is and refuses to compromise it, that man is unstoppable. Not because he has no weaknesses, but because his strength comes from within. And nothing external can take that from him. Conclusion. You've been waiting your entire life for someone to see you, to choose you, to validate you, to prove that you're enough. And I'm telling you now, stop waiting. Because that moment you're waiting for, that external confirmation that you have value, it's never coming. Not because you're not valuable, but because value doesn't work that way. It's not something someone else gives you. It's something you claim. It's something you build. It's something you protect. And the moment you stop looking for it outside yourself, the moment you stop seeking permission to exist, to want, to demand better, you become someone no one can ignore. Not because you're loud, not because you're performing, but because you're real. You're a man who knows what he stands for, who knows what he's building, who knows what he's willing to walk away from. And that man is rare. So rare that when people encounter him, they stop. They pay attention. They respect him. Not because he demanded it, but because he didn't need to. His life, his presence, his quiet certainty speaks for itself. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming yourself. The version of you that's been buried under years of conditioning, of approval seeking, of self-betrayal. He's still there, and it's time to bring him back. Not for her, not for them, for you, because you deserve to live a life you respect. You deserve to look in the mirror and see a man you trust. You deserve to walk through the world knowing that your value doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's perception. It just is. And once you know that, once you truly believe it, everything changes. The relationships you attract, the opportunities you create, the way you move through the world, all of it shifts because you're no longer asking for permission. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're already whole. And that's when you realize you were never invisible. You were just looking in the wrong direction. If this resonated with you, subscribe. There's more truth here, more clarity, more of what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. This is just the beginning. Remember to subscribe to receive more audiobooks like this one. Improve your skills with our content.